Nigel Farage has ignited a political firestorm in Westminster, one that could very well reshape the foundations of British politics for a generation. In an electrifying speech delivered in Parliament, Farage did what many across the country have long yearned to see. He stood up and voiced the frustrations, fears, and fury of a public that feels ignored, abandoned, and betrayed. "This government is finished," he declared with defiant clarity. "It's time for a general election." This moment was not merely a soundbite. It marked a significant turning point in the political narrative of the United Kingdom. For the first time in living memory, a party long considered a political outsider, Reform UK, is not only challenging the established order but leading the national conversation. According to the latest data from all major polling institutions, Reform UK has emerged as the front-runner, topping every major poll across the country. This is unprecedented. And they are not leading by a slim margin. The latest figures indicate Reform UK stands at 30% support, 8 points clear of Labour, who have fallen to 22%, while the Conservatives have crumbled to 21%. The two dominant parties that have ruled Britain in alternating cycles for over a century can no longer command the confidence of even half the electorate combined. The old order is collapsing. The British political establishment is in freefall. This is not simply a story of Conservative decline. Reform UK is attracting support from all directions. Disillusioned Labour voters, lifelong Tories who feel politically homeless, and citizens who had previously disengaged from the democratic process altogether are now rallying to Nigel Farage and his message. This is not just a shift in party allegiance, it is a wholesale revolt against a system perceived to be broken beyond repair. For years, Parliament has been accused of existing in a bubble, detached from the realities faced by ordinary people. Farage shattered that bubble. He spoke without fear or compromise, directly challenging Sir Keir Starmer to submit his government to the will of the people. He demanded a general election, arguing forcefully that the Labour government, like its Conservative predecessor, possesses no democratic mandate to continue presiding over what he described as the destruction of Britain. But what has catalyzed this dramatic moment? At the center of the storm lies a geopolitical scandal that has outraged patriots across the country, the surrender of the Chargos Islands. In a quiet, backroom arrangement with Mauritius, Prime Minister Starmer agreed to relinquish British sovereignty over the Chargos archipelago, a strategic overseas territory in the Indian Ocean. The agreement was framed as a diplomatic achievement by government ministers and their left-wing allies. However, to millions of Britons, it is nothing short of a disgraceful act of national betrayal. This is not a mere transfer of land, it is a symbolic surrender of British resolve, identity, and pride. As former Home Secretary Suella Braverman pointedly observed, this was never about national security or international law. It was about decolonization theatre, virtue signalling, and appeasement of globalist interests. Billions of pounds of public money have now been wasted. Our armed forces' strategic foothold in the Indian Ocean has been fatally compromised. And for what? So that the Prime Minister can be applauded by unelected bureaucrats in Brussels and at The Hague. This is not leadership, it is capitulation. It is not progress, it is weakness draped in the language of modernity. While Starmer grins smugly and hides behind legal jargon, real patriots weep. This betrayal has cut to the heart of what it means to be British. Meanwhile, the domestic situation is deteriorating. Farage's appeal is not driven solely by foreign policy or constitutional outrage. His movement is rooted in the everyday pain experienced by millions of ordinary people, soaring energy bills, rising crime, and a justice system that no longer seems to serve the interests of law-abiding citizens. Under Labour's governance, confidence in public institutions has plummeted. The criminal justice system, once the bedrock of civil order in Britain, is now perceived as a mockery. Two-thirds of the public believe it requires sweeping reform. Over 60% hold Labour directly responsible for the early release of dangerous offenders, despite the policy's origins under the previous Conservative government, because Starmer has, in the eyes of many, made a bad situation even worse. He has allowed violent criminals to re-enter society prematurely while victims remain voiceless and vulnerable. There is a pervasive sense that those who play by the rules are punished, while those who break them are coddled. Compassion has been extended to the perpetrators of harm, but rarely to its victims. Under Starmer, the justice system has, critics say, become a vehicle for progressive posturing rather than public protection. The economic picture is equally dire. Winter fuel payments have been slashed, placing immense pressure on pensioners and low-income families during one of the most expensive winters in recent memory. Energy prices continue to soar, and the government's response has been, at best, condescending. Rather than delivering tangible relief, Labour ministers offer patronising lectures, increased taxation, and more bureaucratic red tape. The Chargos Islands betrayal, for many, represents the final straw, the moment the mask slipped and the true priorities of this government were laid bare. Starmer's decision to sign away sovereign British territory while smiling for international cameras has been interpreted not as diplomacy, but as national self-abasement. Former Conservative Minister Simon Clarke described the day the agreement was signed as the most humiliating moment for Britain since the Suez Crisis. And yet, for Nigel Farage, this dark day may well be remembered as the spark that lit a national awakening. In his impassioned speech, Farage proclaimed that the British people are tired of being ignored. Tired of being taxed, scolded, and governed by elites who do not share their values or their struggles. He declared that the time has come to take back control, not only of our borders or our laws, but of our very democracy. Reform UK's support base reflects this call to arms. Around 20% of its new voters once backed Labour. Another 20% are politically re-engaged citizens who abstained at the last election. These are not the usual swing voters, they are the forgotten, the disillusioned, the voiceless. And now they have found a movement that speaks to them. Nigel Farage is not merely leading a political campaign, he is fronting a popular uprising. A rebellion against what many now regard as a managed decline overseen by out-of-touch Westminster elites. He is challenging the globalist orthodoxy that has hollowed out national identity in the name of internationalism, multiculturalism, and technocracy. When Farage stood in Parliament and demanded a general election, he was not engaging in political theatre. It was, in effect, a declaration of political war. A war against failure, betrayal, and institutional decay. A war against a governing class that no longer speaks for the British people. He stared down the Labour frontbenchers and said with fierce conviction, "You have no mandate. You have no moral authority. You do not speak for Britain." And when the Speaker attempted to silence him, when Labour MPs scoffed and jeered, the public listened, and many cheered. Labour is floundering. The Conservatives are in disarray. The mainstream media averts its gaze. But the people of Britain are waking up. This is Nigel Farage's moment. This is the beginning of Reform UK's uprising. And if Sir Keir Starmer continues to deny the public its democratic voice, they may very well rise up and demand it by force of political will. Elsewhere in the headlines, commentators are already calling Farage's intervention a political nuke, a moment of clarity, confrontation, and consequence that neither Labour nor the Tories saw coming. Reform UK is no longer on the fringes. It has stepped boldly into the centre of British politics, and it is here to stay. Nigel Farage is no longer content with merely agitating from the sidelines. He is no longer simply rattling cages or challenging the status quo. What he is doing now is far more profound. Farage is flipping the entire political order on its head. He is confronting the political elite head-on, and he is doing so with a clarity of purpose and a sense of mission that is sending tremors through both Labour and Conservative ranks. His latest political assault targets the very heart of the Labour Party's historical base, the so-called Red Wall. These are the proud, working-class communities in the North and Midlands that once stood as the bedrock of Labour support. But decades of perceived neglect, betrayal, and contempt have eroded that loyalty. And Farage, with unflinching resolve, is stepping into that vacuum with a plan that is as audacious as it is strategic. Central to his latest policy offensive is a dramatic commitment to scrap the two-child benefit cap, a measure introduced during years of Conservative austerity and quietly upheld by Labour under Sir Keir Starmer. In tandem, Farage has promised to fully reinstate winter fuel payments for all pensioners, regardless of income. While Starmer dithers and Rishi Sunak hesitates, Farage acts. No focus groups. No political calculation. Just direct, unapologetic advocacy for the people Labour once claimed to represent. He isn't waiting for permission from the political class. He doesn't seek validation from media pundits or civil service mandarins. He is going straight to the electorate, particularly to those voters who feel Labour has abandoned them and who view the Tories as little more than a failed relic of the past. The truth is plain to see: Starmer's Labour is hemorrhaging support. The cracks are no longer subtle. Infighting behind closed doors has spilled into public view. Dissent is growing louder on the backbenches. Senior Labour figures are reportedly in open revolt, demanding that Starmer reverse his own welfare policies, not out of moral conviction, but out of sheer panic. Why? Because Reform UK is outflanking them. Farage has not only stolen the initiative, he has trapped Labour in a corner. Starmer, who once projected himself as a stable technocrat, is now reduced to reacting to Farage's every move. That's not leadership. That's damage control. That's fear in the face of a rising movement that speaks more authentically to ordinary Britons than Labour has in years. But Farage's political insurgency doesn't stop with Labour. He has also turned his fire on the Conservative Party, accusing them of betraying the very values they once espoused. For years, Tory leaders have issued stern warnings about immigration and welfare abuse. Yet, under their watch, Britain has witnessed record levels of migration, while vital services for British citizens have been gutted. It is, in Farage's words, Westminster cartel presiding over a failed state. His message to both Labour and the Conservatives is unambiguous: your time is up. Farage's alternative vision is as radical as it is straightforward. He proposes ending the costly and controversial use of migrant hotels. He pledges to scrap the billions squandered on foreign aid and to dismantle the bloated bureaucracies that have mushroomed under the guise of diversity, equity, and inclusion. He calls for that money to be returned, not to technocrats or NGOs, but to the British people who earned it: pensioners, working-class families, and veterans. As Farage sees it, the current government would rather pour money into accommodating illegal migrants than help a British pensioner heat their home in winter. It's a damning accusation, and one that resonates with a public increasingly fed up with misplaced priorities. And what of the Conservatives' supposed comeback strategy? Rumours abound of a desperate bid to rehabilitate Boris Johnson, the very man who once inspired hope with Brexit but later squandered that trust by embracing mass immigration and presiding over a chaotic administration. The idea of wheeling him out as a political saviour is seen by many as an act of desperation, an admission that the party has no meaningful plan for renewal. The reality is stark: the Conservative Party is a collapsing edifice, hollowed out by broken promises and internal discord. Labour, meanwhile, is a rudderless vessel, paralysed by fear and incapable of articulating a coherent alternative. And amid this disarray, Nigel Farage has emerged as the only political figure who appears both credible and fearless, someone willing to say what millions think, yet rarely hear. Even political insiders, those who once dismissed Farage as a provocateur, are now admitting the unthinkable: Reform UK is setting the agenda. Farage is leading the national conversation. Starmer is chasing headlines. Sunak is missing in action. And the public is paying attention. But what sets Farage apart is not populism for its own sake. He is not selling dreams of luxury or utopian promises. He is offering something far more powerful: justice. Justice for pensioners who sacrificed and served, only to shiver in underheated homes. Justice for families working long hours yet falling further behind. Justice for red wall communities left behind by Labour and exploited by the Conservatives. The political elite is afraid, not because Farage is loud, but because he is making sense. He is speaking of dignity, sovereignty, and national pride. He is promising to drain the rot from Westminster and to restore a government that works for the people, not for illegal migrants, foreign lobbies, or unelected bureaucrats in Brussels. And this is precisely why the establishment is turning on him. The media has launched smear campaigns. Labour backbenchers are reportedly in meltdown. The old guard senses that the unthinkable is happening: the public is shifting. Reform UK is no longer a fringe curiosity, it is a serious political force. And if current trends continue, it may soon be the official opposition, if not more.